for the elections for Police and Fire, Crime Commissioner, West Northampton Town and Parish Councils for May 2021. I think, Mark, you're going to move the slides on for me. So if we can go to the next slide. If we could just cover quickly, while he's doing that, some house rules. I'm sure you all know how to do this, but we'll try to do questions all at the end, please, rather than as we go, because otherwise we won't get through all the subjects, and because you may raise questions that actually we're about to answer anyway as we go through. If you've got a question you think of as you go and you'd rather put it in the chat at the bottom, then please do, and we'll also go through those and make sure that we cover those off. As Jane has asked, if we could keep cameras off, that probably just helps everybody with the bandwidth to make sure that we don't get any sort of disturbance in the sound for you. And obviously standard rules in terms of trying to keep your microphones off, please, so that we don't get background noise. So with that in mind, we'll kick off. We are recording this, so you will be able to play it back, and for other people who are unable to attend, they will also be able to pick that up. Okay, so the topics we're going to cover, I'm going to do a short introduction and cover the topics, as you can see, about who's who, the key dates, how the process works, and we're going to talk about the process we'll go through in terms of verification and counting, and we'll also make sure that you've got all the key contacts you need. As part of the presentation, we'll also introduce the key people and their roles, and as I said at the end, we'll get a chance to answer questions. So thank you, Mark. So just kicking off, so who's who? First of all, the returning officers. Have we jumped a slide? Sorry, Mark, is there one before that? I think. Thank you. Yeah. So the returning officer is the person who is overall responsible for the conduct, of the elections in terms of all the legals and everything else. And your returning officer and counting officer for the West Unitaries, for the parish elections, and the deputy paro for the Police and Crime Commissioner elections is myself, Anna Earnshaw, and I'm the Chief Executive of West Northampton Council. For information, the police area returning officer, or PARO, for the whole county is actually Rob Bridge, who's the Chief Executive of North Northampton Council. So in effect, I'm his deputy in terms of the Police and Crime Commissioner elections, but I am the lead for all of the West other elections. All the returning officers always have deputies that we appoint to make sure that they can carry out duties on our behalf. And for the unitary and parish elections, the deputies are Rebecca Peck, all of these people are on the call at the moment, who is the Assistant Chief Executive at the West Northampton Council, Catherine Whitehead, who's our Monitoring Officer and Director of Legal and Democratic Services, Paul Hanson, who is our Interim Democratic Services Manager here in the West, Jane Lyons, who's our Interim Elections Manager, leading the team, Mark West, the Elections Manager for West and based in Northampton, and Louise Aston, who is our Elections Manager based in South Northampton. And we'll be coming back to those people who are going to talk you through various aspects tonight of how the process is going to work. So who's who? The Electoral Registration Officer is responsible for maintaining the register of electors and for the absent voters list. And the Electoral Registration Officer for all areas is the same person as the returning officer. And as I said, we'll provide those contacts to you later on in the presentation so that you've got them. The election teams are based in each of the current existing councils and in buildings at Daventry, Northampton and South Northampton Council. And the managers for each of those teams are Jane Lyons for Daventry, Mark West for Northampton and Louise Aston for South Northampton. So I'm going to hand over now to Mark, I think it is. We're going to start off with just some key dates for your diary about what will happen in what order as we go. So I'll just hand over at that point. Thank you.
Thanks, Anna. It's Jane, but that's okay. Mark's next. So yes, just some key dates for you. They should all be on the timetables that you probably have already seen, but we'll just run through them anyway. The first date you need to know about is the date that we publish the notice of elections, and that's for all 3 elections. The last date we could possibly do this is on the 29th of March, but we're going to put ours up on the Thursday, the 25th of March, so that we have a few extra days to receive all your nomination papers. This is also the same date that PERDA starts in the area. So information on PERDA will be found on the websites the 3 websites in the next few days, so you'll be able to look up the rules on that if you don't already know them. We're going to start informal checks of nomination papers on the 18th of March, so you can have an informal check before you have to hand your final nomination paper in. So we'll start virtually where possible. So you can you can email to us a picture or a scanned copy of your nomination paper and we can check it. The instructions for this for each separate council is in a, sorry, my phone's ringing now for somebody who wants to join the meeting. The instructions for this are all on our individual websites, for which we've sent the links through to you already on email. If you were late joining and you haven't got the email yet, it will be sent to you tomorrow. But all of those instructions are on there for each council. But basically, we're all going to be accepting scans, photographs, so that we can have an informal check for you, let you know if there's any issues, and then we will be able to accept your nomination papers after that from Friday the 26th at 10 o'clock via appointment. And I'll mention that again in a moment. The close of nominations, withdrawal of nominations and notice of appointment of election agents for all elections is on 4 p.m. on Thursday the 8th of April. So all the deadlines are on the same day. So if you want to withdraw from the election, it's on the same date and time as if you were standing. There's no way we can move that date. 4 o'clock is the last time we can accept a nomination paper by law. For people wanting to register to vote, the deadline for that is midnight on Monday the 19th of April, and we shall go through a bit about registration later. And the deadline for post-vote applications or changes to existing postal vote or proxy vote applications is at 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 20th of April. Thanks, Mark. So deadlines for new proxy votes, that's 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 27th of April. If there's a medical emergency or you're called away for business, or a person is called away for business between 5 o'clock on Tuesday the 27th of April and 5 o'clock on polling day, we can issue an emergency proxy. There is also going to be an emergency proxy put in place for COVID. So if someone has to self-isolate or they have symptoms, then an emergency proxy can be received for that as well. But that isn't in place yet, but it's going to be. The appointment of polling and counting agents, the deadline for that is Wednesday the 28th of April. If we don't have that information by the 28th, we won't be able to admit anybody else into the count after that. So that is quite an important date for you. Polling day is Thursday the 6th of May, and the polls will open at 7 o'clock and they'll run through till 10. And as I said before, the deadline to apply to vote by proxy on grounds of medical emergency or called away on business is 5 o'clock on Thursday the 6th. That's also the same time that if someone loses or spoils their postal vote, they can get a replacement. And right up to 9 o'clock on polling day, we can make alterations to the register to correct any clerical errors that might have been found during the day when people have gone to vote. Thanks, Mark. So qualifications, so to be able to stand as a candidate, you must satisfy the criteria on the day you were nominated and on polling day. So you must be at least 18 years old, be British qualifying Commonwealth citizen or national of an EU member state, and that even after Brexit is still the case. If you are a member of an EU state, you can still stand. At the moment, the law hasn't been changed. So you also have to be at least one of the following: registered local government elector for the local authority area, occupied as owner or tenant of any land or premises in the local authority area during the whole 12 months preceding the nomination, that your principal or only place of work, including unpaid, during the last 12 months in the local authority area, or lived in the local authority area during the last 12 months. And we ask you to sort of let us know as many of those as possible. So if they're all 4, then that's brilliant. If you tick all the boxes, then tick them on your form. If it's for a parish, if you're from parish council, you have to lived in the parish community area or within 3 miles of it during the whole 12 months before the day of your nomination. So that doesn't count for the whole area, that is your parish area, and it's as the crow flies from the boundary. Thanks, Mark. So disqualifications. So you cannot stand to be a candidate if you're employed by the local authority or hold a paid office under the authority. And that's the whole of West Northampton in this case, including joint boards or committees. However, you may be employed by the authority if you are working at certain schools, fire services, police or health services. So there's a bit of anomaly there because we're now a unitary authority. You cannot stand if you're subject of a bankruptcy restriction order in England or Wales, or have been sentenced to a term of imprisonment of 3 months or more, including suspended, without the option of a fine during the 5 years before polling day, or if you have been disqualified under the Audit Commission Act 1998. And also, if you are serving a disqualification due to being found guilty of a corrupt or legal practice by an election court, and also if you hold a politically restricted post. Thank you, Mark. So as I said before, all candidates must submit their nominations by 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of April. And with that, they need to hand in their nomination form, their consent to nomination form and their home address form, and that's new to our area for this time. So when Mark goes through the nomination papers, he will let you know about that and what you have to do. Also, by that time, if you are standing for a party in the unitary elections, you will need a certificate authorising the use of a party name or the registered description on the ballot paper, and a written request to use one of the party's emblems on the ballot paper as well. That is optional. We can look at the emblem on the Electoral Commission website, but we normally ask for that anyway. So there's a couple of links there which will be on your slides when you've got them on your email. So you can go straight to there to find nomination forms. So and the parish election forms are also on there. Mark, can you just go back just 1 second? If you need a printed form, you can obtain them from our local council buildings, but we will have to post them to you because of COVID, because we're not, our offices aren't open to the public at the moment, but we can arrange them to post them to you, and we've already sent quite a few out, so that's not a problem. Thanks, Mark. So take care when submitting your nomination papers. Mistakes could invalidate it. So complete your nomination papers early and arrange, as I said earlier, to provide an informal check. And we can do this via the 18th of March via scan photograph, as I said before. And the email address will be the respective email address for your council, which can be found on emails. If you don't have it, we can let you have it. Also on the links that we've sent on the emails are the advice for nominations in each council, so that they can be handled in a COVID secure way. These are very important to be followed because we can't take any chances. There will be security at the offices. We're asking you to make your appointments on time. If you don't make your appointments on time, then there could be an issue. We might have to sort of rearrange an appointment for you, which we don't really want to do. I'm just noting about appointments. We can have appointments made between 10 o'clock and 4 o'clock on any day from the 26th of March until the 8th of April, but that will mean that Easter weekend isn't counted because it's a bank holiday. So we advise that you get your appointments in early as possible so that you're not disappointed. We will need to know when you make your appointment how many papers you're bringing in, whether you're bringing in just your own or whether you're parish clerk, you're bringing in all of the papers for the whole parish, or if you are an agent, if you're bringing in all the papers for the area from your candidates, so that we can judge how long we think it's going to take. Next, please, Mark. So your nomination paper, it must be delivered by hand. It cannot be sent by post, fax or any other means. Now, obviously, you've sent your informal one, that's fine. You can send that via email, but we can't accept the actual final nomination form in the post or online. It has to be handed in. If you are overseas, you can submit your consent to nomination electronically and certificates of authorization and emblem forms, but we can't receive your papers. I'm sorry, messages keep popping up on the chat, so I'm getting a bit diverted. I think messages, Richard, are you okay to answer those?
Sure, no problem. I will address the messages in the chat.
Thank you. So the nomination forms also must be delivered to the relevant council building for processing. So if you would normally be in the Northampton area, they need to be delivered to the Guildhall. If you're in Daventry, to the civic offices in Daventry, and at Toaster at the Forum. So just like you would normally do, but it will be West Northamptonshire Council. Okay. And now I'm going to hand over to Mark to talk about nomination forms.
Thanks, Jane. So on the, as Jane mentioned, the nomination papers have changed this year in a number of ways. So if you have used old nomination papers that you may have used in the past, you will need to go and download those new ones because the forms will be different. The nomination form in itself hasn't really changed that much at all. So you're still including your full name, the area that you're standing, and there is an optional section for you to include a commonly used name. So if you're known by under a different name, then you can put that in that box, or it can be left blank. A commonly used name should be something that is different from your full name. So you shouldn't use, so if you have a middle name, which you generally use as your commonly used name, you shouldn't use it like that. Then the description field is is what will go under your name. So this can either be left blank, it can be independent, it can be a 6-word description if you're standing for a parish election only. That 6-word description must not be confusing to the public and cannot make it so that it will confuse with the political party. And in the description, you would also put the party, if you're standing on behalf of the party name or description authorised by on behalf of the nominating officer. So the nomination forms for the Police, Fire and Crime Commission elections will be collected by Northamptonshire Council. So we're only dealing with the unitary and the parish elections. The other change that has happened to the nomination paper this year is that in addition to the home address form, for the unitary elections, the subscribers has been reduced to only two subscribers being required, and they must be from the electoral area that you're standing in. For the parish election, it's only 2 subscribers are required, and the subscribers must, as I said, must be from the electoral area you're standing in. You must sign and print. They must sign and print their names, and the details of the subscribers against the electoral register is valid on the 1st of March. If they're not on the 1st of March register, then they can't subscribe your nomination. Only ask your subscribers to sign after completing the name, address and description fields on the form, because that is what they're confirming that they're happy to nominate against. The one thing we find regularly that candidates do make mistakes on is that on the electoral register, they occasionally get the wrong number, especially when you have the paper form. So just for your information, the elector number is always to the left of the name, and the house number will always be to the right. So when you're completing the nomination paper, please make sure that you put in the elector number, not the house name number. The elector number is only part of the information you have to put on there. There's also the polling district, which will be at the front of the register and at the top of every page on the register, so you know. So it goes to the polling district followed by the elector number. So on the consent to nomination form for local elections, it must include your name, again, the area standing in, confirmation of the qualifications that apply. So rather than picking them, all you need to do is just cross out any which don't apply this time round. Then you'll need to provide your date of birth and signature, the date of consent, and the witness name and signature. Now, the witness name and signature will also appear, needs to be exactly the same as on the home address form. So as I said, as Jane said before, the home address form is the new addition to nominations this year. It was introduced to allow candidates and agents to prevent having their address printed on the ballot paper and on notices that go out, in order to prevent to protect them if they felt at risk if their details were out there. So part 1 of the household home address form is compulsory, has to be completed, and on that you would complete the full name and home address in full, your qualifying address, or where you have declared on your consent to nomination that you meet more than one qualification. So on the you would put the address against each qualification, and then the full name and home address in full of the witness to your consent to nomination. So as I say, the witness on the consent to nomination and the home address form, they sign on the consent to nomination form and then they put their details on the home address form. So part 2 of the home address form is optional. So you only complete this if you do not want your address to be made public. And what you would put is the name of the relevant area in which your home address is situated. So that would be the local authority area that you live in. So the majority of you, that would be West Northamptonshire Council. Or if you live outside the UK, the name of the country in which your home address is situated. And then you just need to sign and date that. You will also have the certificate of authorisation. This only needs to be completed if you're standing on behalf of the party. If you're an independent, you don't need to complete this section. So party candidates must have written permission to use the party name or description from the designated nominating officer or a person appointed to act on their behalf. And the certificate may allow the use of a party name or description and allow the candidate to choose whether to use the party name or any of the descriptions registered with the Electoral Commission, which must be submitted before or with the nomination papers by 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of April. The certificate of authorisation, the description must be the same. What they authorise must be the same as what is on the nomination paper. So please make sure that when you're completing that, it matches what's on the nomination form. And then if you wish to have an emblem on the ballot paper, you will also need to complete if you're standing for a party, you need to complete the emblem request form. And this again must be submitted by 4 p.m. on Thursday, 8th of April. Party candidates should supply an electronic version of the emblem to the returning officer if required. So election agents are responsible for the proper management of your election campaigns, and election agents can be appointed by unitary candidates only. Notification of the appointment must reach the returning officer by 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 8th of April, and the form is included in the nomination pack. You will become your own agent by default if none is appointed. Please note, if you want your address to be private by completing the home address form, you will need to appoint an agent. So other agents can be appointed to attend postal vote openings, polling stations, and the count on your behalf. You must give notice in writing of any people who are appointed as polling and count agents by Wednesday, the 28th of April. We will provide forms, but they should be in your pack. The appointment of postal vote agents attending a particular opening session must be made before the start of each session. We will give 48 hours notice. This information will be notified to you in the candidate's information letter we will send to you after the nomination period is closed. For candidate, so if you haven't already got access to the registers, candidates and agents are entitled to a copy of the electoral register and the absent voters list. For candidates, and they can have those once they officially become a candidate. They can only be used for permitted purposes. So that is to complete the nomination form, to help you campaign, and to check that donation and loans are permissible. Any person found breaching those requirements could face a fine of £5,000. You can email to request a copy of the register, but please do state that you are standing as a candidate, and can you let us know which area you will be standing in. And to ensure quick receipt, we recommend that it's better to request it in data format, because we can get that out to you much quicker than if we do it via paper. But more information on that, please refer to part 4 of the Commission's guidance for further details. And at the end of my section, I think I'm passing over to Louise now.
Yep, thanks, Mark. I'll wait for you to just change the slide. Thank you. So registration as a candidate, you're in a really unique position to be able to encourage people to register to vote. If you're out canvassing, whether you're a party or a parish or whatever, you will get people who will ask you how to register and what the deadlines are. So I would encourage you to make sure you're aware of the deadline, and that is the 19th of April at midnight for being on the register. I would encourage people not to leave it to the last minute to register, because if they wish to have a postal vote, the deadline for that is the following day at 5 o'clock. So we do need to make sure that registrations are processed and with us by midnight on the 19th, to make sure that they're valid and they can vote in the upcoming elections. They will need their national insurance numbers to register to vote. That's something that's been in place for a few years now. If they don't have their national insurance number, that's not a problem. It just means that they have to supply us with some extra ID when that registration comes through to the electoral teams. The quickest way for people to register to vote is via the .gov website that's on the slide. They can do it online, and it's about a 5-minute process. It is really, really quick to get registered. If I can have the next slide. Thanks. as I say, if people don't have their national insurance numbers, it's not something that you always have lying around now. They will just need to provide some further information, but we will write to them directly and ask them for that additional information if needed. Not everybody has to supply it, so it may well be lots of people can go on without any issues at all. Absent voting, this is what we call proxy and postal voting. It comes under the heading of absent because you're not going to the polling station yourself. If you're encouraging people to vote who can't go to the station, they have the options of having a postal vote or a proxy vote, which is where they appoint somebody to go to that polling station and vote on their behalf. They will only qualify for it, though, if they are on the voters register at the time of the election. Sorry, yeah. So what we would ask you to do as candidates and agents at these elections is make sure that you are aware of the deadlines. You don't produce any material that looks like a polling card. So if you're doing leaflets that are going out, they don't resemble the poll card because that isn't allowed. You don't pay people to display your adverts unless they're doing it as part of their normal business. And if you're doing posters and bits and pieces outside, that they are removed 2 weeks after the election. And the next one, please, Mark. Thank you. There is a code of conduct for campaigners. This has been in place for numerous years with the Electoral Commission. It makes sure that campaigning is done in a healthy and professional manner, and that the integrity of the electoral process isn't brought into question. I would urge everybody to read the guidance. You can find it on the Electoral Commission website under the quick guide for party workers. It basically talks you through what is acceptable in the campaigning rules. It's there to protect you as campaigners, to make sure that you can't be called into question, and it's also there to protect the electoral registration and the elections teams and their processes. We would ask that you do not handle postal ballot packs. So if somebody has completed their postal vote and wants to hand it back, I would ask you to tell them to put it in the post box, or they can hand it back to a polling station, or they can deliver it to the council offices. I would encourage you not to take that vote, because you could then be called into question if it wasn't delivered or somebody assumed it hadn't been delivered. We would also say that if you are approached by somebody to ask to vote on somebody's behalf as a proxy, that none of your campaigners take up that role. You would ask them to speak to a family member or a neighbour, so that again you're not called into question. Really reiterating what I've just said in that postal ballot papers, stay well away from them, unless obviously it's your own. That's a bit different. We would ask that you don't assist people in completing their postal packs. There's plenty of impartial people who are around who can help do that if need be. You are allowed to put your messages out to voters on polling day. We would ask that you don't put anything in the vicinity of the polling station. So if there is a parish notice board at the entrance to the village hall, that there is no candidate literature put on that, because that would call that poll into question. And make sure you adhere to the current COVID guidance that might be in place at the time of the poll. Polling day itself, it starts early at 7 AM until 10 PM. We will be in the offices, man phones from 6:30. Voters in the polling station, if there is a queue at 10 o'clock, they are still entitled to be issued with that ballot paper and allowed to vote. That's guidance that's been in for a while. Postal voters can hand their postal votes into their polling station that they would normally go to. They can hand it into the former district or borough areas for the unitary elections, or to the parish within the parish area, which will usually be 1 or 2 polling stations within that parish. They all have to be delivered by 10 o'clock at night. And if somebody is in a queue at 10 o'clock wanting to hand in their postal vote, they can still do so. The polling stations will be COVID secure. We are following current guidelines. There will be PPE. We're asking voters to bring their own pencils as per current government guidelines. There will be screens in place for polling staff to sit behind, and there will be the usual hand sanitizer at the doors and the request to wear masks if you're not exempt. Counting of the votes, the verification and account for all elections will take place at Silverstone Wing at the Silverstone circuit. Verification will start immediately after the close of poll on the 6th of May, and we will keep going until the verification is done, which is likely to be the early hours of the Friday. The timing of the other counts are due to start on Friday at 12 noon for the unitary. The parish and the neighbourhood plan referendum, which we have taken place in Ashton Parish only, that will take place on the 8th of May at 10 o'clock. They're the counts. And the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner count will take place on Monday the 10th of May, starting at 10 a.m. We have a contingency in place on Sunday the 9th in case COVID restrictions mean that the numbers of staff in the venues have to be reduced. We're already working to make sure that the count is COVID secure. Only those people who have been issued with a ticket will be allowed to enter the count. The numbers with regards to candidates, agents, election agents is being looked at currently, and we will see what is on the next Prime Minister's roadmap on the 12th of April before we make any firm decisions on numbers being allowed into the count.
Lovely, thank you for that. Yeah, hope everybody can hear me. My name is Brian Pye. I'm the police single point of contact for electoral fraud, as it said on the slide there. Basically, I'll keep it brief because I know Louise has done a fantastic job in outlining some of the rules, and obviously I'm not going to reiterate that, but basically, my role is fraud supervisor in my daytime job, the Economic Crime Unit Fraud Squad based at Western Fayville Police Station. I'm also the electoral fraud SPOC for Northamptonshire Police, as I've just said. My role is to deal with allegations of unlawful conduct, which could lead people being interviewed under caution and the matter being referred to the Crown Prosecution Service for advice on whether to pursue the matter to court. I also make monthly reports to both the Electoral Commission. I work very closely with the Electoral Commission, and also to the portfolio holder within the police, Deputy Chief Constable, West Midlands Police, and he heads it up under ACPO, basically. So it therefore follows that one person is responsible for the investigations, so that there's an accurate and up-to-date information is reported to both the Electoral Commission and locally, basically. Right, conduct of candidates and supporters. Basically, there are two key principles to adhere to. This is from the Electoral Commission. First one is with regard to candidates and supporters should assist in the efficient and secure administration of elections and uphold the secrecy of the ballot. And the next one is no candidate or supporter should place themselves in a situation where their honesty or integrity or that of their party or candidate can be questioned. Those of you who are seasoned candidates and agents will know this anyway, but this is basically for people just starting out. The Electoral Commission produce literature on their website, and I'm sure you either have got it or you will have sight of it. And this is the guidance for candidates and agents, which has been alluded to earlier on in the meeting. The Code of Conduct for Campaigners, which again, Louise has referred to. And there are also rules about tellers, do's and don'ts. So I'm aware of all those publications. Going on to what I actually do and the procedure, the key principles that I adhere to is that all allegations relating to elections should be brought to the attention of me, and I would ask that you seek the advice of your electoral services before reporting, as it may be that simple matters can be sorted out between the self and the electoral services before escalating it into a criminal inquiry. But that's common sense anyway. As I say, those of you who are seasoned campaigners will know this anyway. For every accusation, the complainant is expected to provide an evidential statement. So we would say that if anybody's making an allegation, they must be prepared to make a witness statement to back that up. Obviously, no statement, there won't be any investigation. Hearsay is not acceptable. So and also any unsubstantiated third-party allegations will not be investigated. It's common sense, basically. Guidance is encouraged via electoral services. However, it cannot be expected that they will then act to report the matters to the police. Reports cannot be offloaded onto your electoral services department. So if you've got a complaint, then you need to be the author of the statement and provide evidence to support your accusation. If it appears that the referral is malicious, basically we will take the view that the informant should be warned that making a false accusation could result in them being investigated for wasting police time or other serious offences. But I wouldn't want to put that off the making of proper, genuine, bona fide complaints. And just whizzing through this briefly, once the investigation is complete, the procedure is that we liaise with the Crown Prosecution Service. Now, we'll add that the Crown Prosecution Service aren't local, they're specialists, and they're based in York. Obviously, and for that reason, they remain impartial. They will have no local contact whatsoever. So just whizzing through briefly, common offences that are easily avoidable. Now, as I say, the purpose of me talking to you is on a prevent strategy rather than a prosecution. So if I outline these common offences that are easily avoidable, hopefully, I won't see many coming through, hopefully. False statements with regard to nomination papers. Now, Mark, I think, has already got into the details of the nomination papers. Sometimes we get allegations of people putting false statements on there with a view to being nominated. False signatures in support of candidacy are another one that I've seen before. So the penalty for that is corrupt practice, and they're quite severe penalties in these offences. The next common one that we used to see a lot of was failing to put an imprint on electoral documents. Basically, the details to appear on election publications are the name and address of the printer, the name and address of the promoter, and the name of the address of any person on behalf of whom the material is being published and is not the promoter. So anybody involved in that printing process or circulation process, the details should be on there. If I can get you to take one message away, is to please ensure that where there is a formal election process, a paper, put your details on there as per the imprint. And that will save me a lot of work. The next one is false statements as to candidates. Any person who before or during an election for the purpose of effecting the return of any candidate in any election makes or publishes any false statement of fact in relation to the candidate's personal character of conduct, unless there are grounds for believing the statement is true, commits an offence, basically. Personal character is meant to encompass the character of the candidate arriving from their private life rather than their public life. Sometimes we get statements made about the performance of an existing candidate with regard to their political life, and that's not an offence. Basically, it's basically slander. Is fits into this particular offence. The other offence I was going to outline was, and it's already been alluded to by Louise, about postal and proxy voting. Please don't be tempted as candidates or agents to collect postal votes from people. I'm not saying you will, but this has happened in the past, not in this area. The candidates have gone through and wholesale picked up postal votes. A few years ago, not in this area, these particular candidates were seen looking through they'd actually opened the postal votes and they were looking through them. That's quite some years ago, but it wasn't in this area, and they were all prosecuted for that. So please don't be tempted to get involved in any collection of postal votes. That's it with regard to me. If there are any questions, I would be glad to answer them either now or at a later date. And as I say, my role is basically to get the message across, and it's with regard to prevention rather than prosecution. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Brian, for coming in and talking to us. We're going back to Louise now.
Okay, spending returns. These are due in 35 days after the result of election has been declared. So that will be different depending on when your election result, the count takes place. So just keep an eye on that one. Sample of returns, the Electoral Commission do often ask us for a sample of the candidates and parties' returns for our areas. They do scrutinise them, and they will contact you directly if need be. Failure to submit an expense return is actually a criminal offence, and the police will enforce that. We don't reimburse you for any spending you've made. It's about making sure that what you've spent is legitimate and on the campaign, and it records donations that you may have had given to you. Forms can be downloaded from the Electoral Commission website, and I would urge you all to use the forms that are on there currently, because they do update them regularly. The spending is the responsibility of the election agent or the candidate. There is a set limit that you can spend. The limit for this year that's been set by the Electoral Commission is £806 plus 7p per elector in the ward. So the ward is your unitary area that you're standing in, and that's based on electors as of the 31st of March. Anything you spend over £20, you need to keep the receipt, because that needs to be included in your return. Part 3 of the Electoral Commission guidance for candidates and agents does actually explain it in more detail. The returning officer and her staff are not able to advise you with regards to spending and what you can and can't put in or shouldn't put in. You need to have those conversations with the Electoral Commission or with your agents or parties. It's not something that we would be able to advise or issue a ruling on. Over to you, Jane.
Thanks, Louise. Okay, just the last few things now before we can take your questions. Just looking at COVID restrictions and tellers. Can you please ensure, if you are agents, that your tellers at any polling station maintain 2 metre distance from those queuing to enter polling stations? And due to the current pandemic, they will have to be outside the venue unless there's enough space for socialising, depending on the building itself, obviously. If it's a massive building and your tellers would normally be outside the station but not outside the building, we're actually saying they need to be outside this year. We are also trying to discourage use of tellers where possible due to COVID restrictions, but we understand that they're an important part of the process, so we're willing to sort of accept that as long as they can adhere to the instructions that we give out. Thanks, Mark. So the verification count, we're busy working on this at the moment to work out how many people we're going to be able to get into the halls that we have at Silverstone. They're very large halls, but the restrictions are also, they're quite severe. So we're working out how many people we can get in before we can let you know how many people we're going to be allowing in. So just watch this space, really. We will listen to what Boris is saying in his roadmaps, and we're getting advice from public health as well. So everything will be ran to order, but we might not be able to let as many of you in as we normally would. And also, when you do come to the count venues, the same restrictions would be put in place as the polling stations, i.e. you would need to wear a mask unless you're exempt. There'll be hand sanitizer and screens up as well, and floor markings. Thanks, Mark. So poster vote opening, we don't normally get a lot of take up with people wanting to watch the poster vote opening sessions, but obviously you are able to. What we would ask this time, though, that if you do want to come and look at the poster vote opening, that you make an appointment for when you're going to come in. This is only so that we can make sure that we haven't got too many people in at the same time wanting to view what we're doing, because obviously due to COVID restrictions again, we've got very strict rules in our offices, which our facilities managers at the offices are running as well. So we've got to adhere to their rules as well as national rules. So we have to be really careful. There are other people working in the building. So if you can let us know if you want to come and view those. When we send out your candidate information letters, we will put this information in there. We will let you know when the opening sessions are going to be. We'll let you know how many people are going to be allowed at the count, etc. So we won't just leave you in the dark. We will write to you probably the week after the nominations close to let you know about all of that. Okay, next is contacts. So there's quite a lot of contacts on there. Now, we've sent you quite a few links, and we've had a few messages on the chat to say that some of the links aren't working. So we did send an email yesterday with the Electoral Commission links in. So if you could use those, if you haven't got the email through, which everybody should have had, but if not, if you just drop us a line, we can send you those links through again. But they're also on this page. I think some people are having problems opening it from the slide. So it's probably better if you open them directly from the email. Yeah, I'm seeing messages coming up saying they didn't have an email, but everyone that registered up until about 4 o'clock today got an email. So just let us know if it hasn't come through to you. So the contacts are the contacts that you would normally have gone to. So at Daventry, the email address and telephone numbers are there, and at Northampton and at South Northamptonshire as well. Obviously will be called West Northamptonshire on April the 1st. So the email address there, they relate to West Northants. We have Electoral Commission contacts. So if you need any help from them, their number is there. And we also have the Electoral Commission links again there. The other links that we sent through, which link to the nomination guidance, there's a whole host of information on those websites as well, which is being added to every single day. So you can always keep that link and go to it whenever you want to. The comms department are working really hard to keep those up to date. So right, I think we can go in for questions now. If you want to ask a question, can you put your hand up? Okay, right. I will do the questions, and one of us, I will ask you what your question is, and one of us will come back to you. Okay. Can I just say that, Anna, there is a question on the chat about public health and COVID from Johnny Ball. Is it possible you could answer that one?
Yeah, so Lucy has been engaged with us throughout this, sorry, I'm going to put my camera on as well, throughout this process, and her team have been involved too. She often gets guidance before even we do on some of this stuff. So we have been in direct communication about it. And as the team have already said, we'll also make sure that it's public health who do a risk assessment of the venues and our arrangements in terms of polling stations and everything else to make sure that we are absolutely following the latest guidance. So you can be reassured that she will have her eyes and the team will have eyes over everything we do to make sure we're compliant and that people can do this safely. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm coming now to Councillor Mark Allen. If you can unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. On that subject of COVID restrictions and guidance, I'd like to ask where candidates and agents can find the latest guidance and restrictions for canvassing and campaigning as opposed to the actual carrying out of the election.
Yeah, of course, that is all on the Electoral Commission's website. Now, you might need to wait a few days because I know they were compiling it and I haven't had the notification through that it's on there, but they were compiling the campaign guidance for you all. So it should be on their website.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Can I ask Brian Markham for his question?
Thank you. If I could, perhaps two questions. The first one, way back at the beginning, I forget who was covering that part. They mentioned the date of the 18th of March as a date you could send in, if you like, do a dummy run, email in nomination papers, and they could be informally checked over. With this signature, the two little subscribers now. I thought they were called the nomination and the seconder, but subscribe. Would they need to have signed it by that stage? You would want the whole thing completed, including the agent and everybody else, I guess, at that time.
Yes, we would, because we'd have to check that those people are on the register, that they've signed it.
Just be absolutely clear, the subscribers, if you're doing it, we can download electronic forms. The subscribers, there's no way they have to physically sign things. They can't do electronic signing no. on anything. All right. Okay.
We need to have their signature.
Yeah. Okay. And final thing, I apologise, mention was made of advertising poster boards. Obviously, paid advertising has to be within somebody who has advertising signs. But there's mention of that you would like poster boards removed within 2 weeks of the election. Now, traditionally in Northamptonshire, my understanding was that you're not allowed to put, say, stake boards on the side of the public highway, but only on private land. Is that, or is that likely to change at this election? You know, if we could put stake boards up as long as we took them away. And I understand that, but you know, actually, we're not allowed to do it at all.
We would follow the guidance from highways, yes, that they aren't allowed to go on there, but it's not something that we would police ourselves. It's not something that we would put.
It's a follow-up because in Birmingham and some places they're allowed to tie things on lampposts and so on, as long as you take them down afterwards. But my understanding, there's no change locally as far as...
Not as far as I know, but Anna might be able to answer if she does want to change that. I'm not sure, but it's not something we police anyway.
No, and I think we would stick to that guidance. I mean, generally for safety and other reasons, it's always fairly restricted, isn't it, in terms of public highways and things. So I think we would stick with that normal guidance.
Okay, we're going to move on to John Godwin now.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can I just confirm that I cannot reuse the nomination papers that I completed for the previous election, the one that was cancelled due to COVID? I do have to complete new forms.
I'm afraid you do, yes, because election numbers will have changed since then as well because of the republishing of the register. So they would be out of date, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay. Andy.
Hello. I hope you mean this Andy.
I don't know. All I can see is Andy on the screen.
Oh, right. Yeah, I just want to clarify something. Like perhaps quite a few others, I intend to stand both at the unitary elections and at parish council elections, and you know, my concern is that I can't be in two places at once for the count. But am I right in saying that the parish counts are going to be on a different day to the unitary?
Yes, yeah, it's on the slides. The parish counts on the Saturday and the unitary counts on the Friday. So you're absolutely fine. You just need to make 2 visits to Silverstone.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Daniel Soane.
Good evening. I just have 2 very quick questions. So briefly looking over the forms, thank you very much for these. Obviously, we've got West Northamptonshire Unitary. The choices are County District, London Borough of. Which one of those are we choosing?
You can just cross that out and put unitary. That's no problem at all.
No
it's
problem.
Because they don't seem to be, we don't seem to be, Electoral Commission aren't announcing us as unitary, so that option isn't on there yet. But if you can just cross it out and put unitary, that's absolutely fine. We'll still accept
the answer's district.
Is it district, Catherine?
District. We're a district council.
Okay, there you go.
There's
then.
no such thing as unitary.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
So that answers that question. Also on expenses, obviously you've outlined the 800 and what have you, and the 7p per elector. Also, are we under the same rules this year as in previous, where we have multi-member wards and where a party is putting forward multiple candidates, that there is a reduction dependent on the amount of candidates a party is putting forward in each ward? Traditionally, if it's 3 candidates, the per candidate limit is reduced by a third. Does that stand at this election also? You didn't mention it, I just wanted to clarify.
No, Daniel, we didn't mention it, and we've never been asked that before. So we will take that back with us and get back to you if that's okay, because not really sure on the answer to that at the moment.
Can I answer that? That is indeed the case on the electoral registration site. 3 member wards, then there are reductions, but they're on the Electoral Commission site explaining what the figures will be.
Thank you, Brian. Alan Nape.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Jane. Yeah, just 2 quick ones. Well, one was on the timing of the count on the Friday. Do you know when you're planning on finishing, or is that a bit of an unknown?
It is a bit of an unknown at the moment because of the COVID restrictions, mainly because we're not sure how many counters we can get into the building at the moment, and of course then how many candidates and agents. So we'd like to think by late afternoon, but it could take longer than that, I'm afraid. We have got the contingency built in, going over from the Friday to the Saturday to Sunday if necessary. So yeah, we can't give an exact time, I'm afraid.
No, that's fine. The other quick one, for nominations, could you theoretically get if there was 3 candidates for the same party in awards, could your 2 fellow candidates nominate you? Is that allowed?
Mark, do you know the answer to that one?
Yes, it is allowed. It's not restricted on who can, as long as they're in the electoral area, you can subscribe to other candidates. That's fine.
Perfect. Just trying to reduce movements for COVID.
We're so used to doing 1 member in Daventry because we were 3 we elected in 3rd, so we're so used to doing that we forget sometimes.
They just need to make sure that they don't subscribe to more than there are.
That's right. That's right. Yes, I remember now, because we had this in a county election a few years ago, where one person subscribed to more than the amount of seats. Yeah. Okay. There are some questions on the chat because some people can't put their hand up. I've still got Daniel, Alan, and Brian's hands up. Are there any other people that have got their hands up? I can't see any. I'll just go to the chat then quickly and see what I can see in the chat.
We have also, just so you know, Jane, we've been recording all the questions in the chat, and we will do a frequently asked questions response to everything, just in case we miss anything.
Okay, thank you. Rod Rodrigo asked, when can we have leaflets delivered earliest, and when do we have to stop putting campaigning messages on social media? Are you a party member, Rod?
Sorry, no, I'm a parish independent.
Okay, I believe leaflets are already going out, but it's best to check on the Electoral Commission website for anything to do with campaigning.
Alrighty, thank you very much.
Okay.
There's also specific advice on campaigning from the 8th of March from the Cabinet Office as well.
Yes, Peter Conquest is saying that the guidance doesn't cover visiting subscribers, the Electoral Commission guidance, but I believe they are putting some guidance out on that. It's just not there yet.
Actually,
we are going, there's a local government, LGA meeting next week, which is free, I think, if you're a member of the LGA, and they're going to be talking about this type of thing as well, if you're free. Have I got any other hands up? Chris Cartmel.
Thank you very much. It was mentioned about election expenses for unitary candidates. There was no mention of election expenses for parish candidates.
Oh, it's the same procedure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
It didn't say that though.
Ah, right, okay. Yeah, most things are relate to both elections. It's just that there's slight differences, but yes, it's the same. It's
Okay,
just a different number of days to hand them in, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Suzanne Reid Maskell has asked, can a neighbour be a seconder? And that is fine as long as they're on the electoral register. Brian, your hand's up again. Did you want to ask another question, or are you? You've just got your hand up. No?
I'm sorry, I'll lift it up there, sorry.
That's okay. Right, so if we haven't got any more questions here, then we will leave you and let you get your tea. But what we'll do is, as Anna said, there'll be a FAQ list, and we will draw up the responses and get them out to you on our websites as soon as possible. Did anyone want to add anything?
Thank you.
That's okay.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very useful.
No, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Jane.
Thank you. Bye.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.